How you guys doing? Obviously, I'm off to a little bit of a late start. Still prepping for the traditions of our opening credit sequence. It's my version of what, I don't know, they call, in television, you call it like a cold open, when you just open with a scene and there's no, uh, what's the word? Exposition. And so you're basically just trying to pick up where the the show picks up. You just pick up where it left off and try to keep going. That's called a cold open. So a lot of great shows had great cold opens. And then I noticed that during the 2000s, I think is when cold open started becoming like a almost like a guaranteed thing. Seemed like more shows were doing cold opens, and from what's that damn show? From that '70s show to Malcolm in the Middle. Oh, cheers. So basically, most good shows tended to start with cold opens, especially later on, after the '90s, because before the cold opens were so popular, it was always a montage of different, it was always the opening song and the little scenes and the characters and all that. It seemed like that started to change around the time the new millennium came up, and just shows started using it more. And before that, the only show that I ever knew that did it, like all the time, was Saturday Night Live. We'd always known Saturday Night Live for its cold open. It always just started, and credits came on later. So yeah, that was my version of a cold open. I'm just sorry, a little distracted. So get home today, and talking with Scott. We're on the bus, and it just blows my mind how these CTA drivers. I remember we used to be called passengers. Now we're called customers. There was a subtle difference in its verbiage. I started noticing with the newer trains and newer buses. Around 2001, we started getting these blue interiors, and we had obviously the old box, the square fronts. You could always tell your bus was coming because it was in a box. It was in a perfect square. And then they started making rounded edges around it, and with bigger signs to tell you what bus it is. Whereas before, it would just kind of have it, there, and just like a street light has a metal rim like this, keeping it the light exposed so you can see what the bus is. Well, then we came out with LED screens and LED lights, so the whole thing was revamped in 2001. And so if you were a kid, or if you were, in that time, it was such a nice change. I remember how good the buses smelled. Like, if you've ever been in a brand new bus, it has its own scent. You can smell the fresh plastic. You can smell the fresh rubber. And it was just really cool to know that you're the only person to ever step on this thing. When you're walking on there, it's for the first time I'd ever seen a clean floor on a CTA bus. So it had us thinking, that CTA was finally getting with the times and finally using their money for actual good purpose. Whereas before, we were constantly asking, what do you even do with the money? Because, we constantly have delayed bus routes, canceled buses, and then when they made the new buses, they also started changing routes, and then they also started shortening routes, lengthening other routes, and some buses were being introduced. I think the pink line was still being extended. I didn't really use the pink line, so I can't really vouch for that one. But I just remember specifically like the Lawrence buses and the Foster buses started using these really nice new curved buses, and they were so nice. And excuse me, it was also around that time that I saw that I was told in a Chicago newspaper, I think it was a Tribune, saying that their employees were going to get a pay hike. And so I was like, okay, so we're going to have new buses that smell awesome, and they're great. And if you look at one of those new buses now, we've already destroyed them. We can never have anything nice here. Look at Marshall Fields. So you had these new buses, you had new fare prices and new ways of paying for fares, and they were going to start discontinuing the transfers. And so it used to be $1.80 for a transfer, so I used to just put $2 in, and you would get your transfer, get on the next bus, and then switch over. So it was $1.50, and then it was 30 cents more if you wanted to transfer. And I will never understand why they gave up on the paper transfers. Those things, they were awesome. Now, it really sucks if you don't have a venture card, because of course you have to pay for one, but it just sucks having to put in $3 just to get a transfer now. And so those little paper ones are just as good as our paper transfers. So in a way, they didn't discontinue the transfers. They just changed the way that we paid for them. And with the prices going up from $150 to $225, and then to I think it's $250 now. It's just insane. And so as we're paying for all these hikes, we noticed that things were getting better, and so we started to believe that maybe we are improving. And the first thing that I noticed was the drivers seemed to be in a better mood. They were happier in 2001. I think it was kind of like from 2001 to where we are now, so many people have left, and the nicest drivers that you knew best retired or were taking their pension or, on unemployment, whatever they did. But, they were letting a lot of people go because they were, at that point where they were ready to turn in their badge. But what it did was it started this influx of extremely rude and unintelligible drivers that speak in mumbles or route information. Of course, we're frozen again. Anytime you asked a driver a question, you got an answer. And now you're lucky if he even looks at you. And, I just really get annoyed that, I noticed that it used to be older guys and it was older people that were always driving the buses. And, I'm sure a lot of people got let go before their pensions or before their retirement. And So you get this influx of new recruits that do not appreciate what they make because they didn't live in a time where they made less. So, you know, maybe they should have a different way of paying drivers, kind of like police. You know, they have to get that hash mark to be respected in a certain light. You know, all police are respected by police, but they have a different respect for you after you get your hash. And so they even have fights over guys that get their hashes a month too early. So maybe we should do this with CTA drivers. So you don't get paid $30 an hour right away. You have to prove that you can handle working in public service. And it does not take much to drive a bus and just not be a dick. It's really not that hard. But it's getting to the point where I'm on a bus and I want to say every other bus there's a problem. Whether it's the driver, whether it's the route, there's always an issue. So trying to get home today, and I was with my friend Scott, and just asking her for the time and asking her, how long is this going to take? You know, how long are you going to sit here? And that's a very basic question. Everyone asks that when you enter a train station. Everyone will ask that. How long do you have? Because the sign doesn't tell us anymore. So my friend Scott asked me to go ahead and just ask her how long she's waiting. And I said, sure. So I get on the bus. I say good morning. And you would have thought that I was asking her for a sexual favor. Like, she looked offended by me asking how long until you head out. You know, how long do I have? Normally we just yell out how long, and the guy gives us 4 minutes, 5 minutes, some hand signal. You know, that's all she had to do. Instead, she made a comment saying, "You don't have to talk to me. I'm fine with that." And I said, excuse me? I'm not a rude person, and it's just, that's not in my nature. I always greet people with a good morning and a fucking smile, you know? That just seems to be the proper way to greet someone. Instead, I catch this woman I understand it's a bad time for her. She apparently really had to use the restroom. And the next customer that gets on was a very annoying guy that we all know. He's one of those guys. He's a well-known dude in Evanston. He loves to ride around in a rascal, and he may have some sort of mobility problems, but I've never seen it. I've literally seen this man run across the street, and then the next day start honking at you from half a block away because he's afraid he might run you over. And it's like, dude, you don't need that chair. And once it comes winter, he starts riding it, and he loves slowing everybody down. You know, he gets off on it. I honestly think so. So another thing was that, you know, it started this huge fight because basically, everyone's frustrated, everyone's cold, and just starting it off with that chip on your shoulder is no way to even think that we're going to be able to engage in a civil conversation, let alone any kind of interaction, you know. And it's just mind-boggling how, and Scott basically put it as he said cushy jobs. And remember, I just said they made routes easier, they gave them better seats, they paid them more. What is it gonna take for you guys to stop being dicks? Maybe we should lower your pay. That's the only way that I can see this making sense. Not lowering pay for good. I just mean there has to be some sort of probationary period, which all employees have, almost all. At Panera Bread, I remember, I think I had the first 90 days, I think, you have a probation. And, after you get that, then you're up for promotions or something like that. It's something to do with the pay periods and stuff like that. But it's an incentive to get the employee to work not not only harder but with care. Get these people to actually give a shit about their jobs. And there's nothing weird about yeah, that just makes sense. I don't know, in my opinion, that just makes sense. So, hello. um so again, the verbiage had changed. Now, earlier I was saying about the verbiage. Now, their syntax had changed because they stopped calling us passengers. They would always say, passengers, please do not lean against the doors. Little things like that. And now they call us customers instead of saying, see, on the bus they have different commands than they do on trains. But there are certain phrases that were always used, and when you ride the CTA so long, you know them by heart. And like, I know it's like smoking, littering, playing loud radio or loud devices is prohibited on CTA vehicles. And it used to say if if a passenger is pregnant or something like that, priority seating is meant for those that need priority. And whenever you used to say that, it would say and expecting mothers, but they always said passengers. Now we're just consumers. So now we're just customers. We're just here to consume your rides. I don't see it that way. Yeah, we are customers technically, but I like the term passenger more. It's more, I don't know, I think it's more not politically correct, but it just seems like the better wording, which doesn't seem to be at all a priority nowadays, of being able to word things properly and say them properly without sounding like a jerk. And that's the thing, is things are getting easier for the asshole, and it's sad. CTA has never been a big, no one ever runs around saying I love the CTA, unless you're talking about the architecture or something like that. Unless you're talking about the actual, industrial part of it, and you're talking about a different subject. You're not saying the experience of being on a Chicago train or bus is such a privilege. It's not. It's damn near a right, since we built it. We're the ones that pay for it. We're the ones that keeping it going. So we're more than just customers. We're the city. So I wish they would go back to just calling us passengers, because I don't see how we're consumers on the CTA. We're not really consuming anything unless you count miles. I guess we're here to consume your miles. But again, there needs to be some sort of incentive for CTA employees, not only to, again, not just to make them work harder, just to make them work more politely. You're dealing with the public. You're dealing with human beings. Just act like one, and we can move on. And oftentimes when there's an argument or a fight on the bus, it's usually because you got a driver with a chip on his shoulder that just feels like picking a fight, and he knows that he can have you removed at any point. And you are given that incentive not to do anything, because you get a much larger stay in prison if you get a much longer sentence if you hit a employee, CTA employee, or any kind of city civil servant employee. If you beat up a mailman, that's a civil servant, so that's gonna give you more time. I think instead of what could be a misdemeanor assault charge will turn into a felony battery charge, just because they're, city employees. They're not necessarily paid by the city, but the CTA is still considered part of the city. And that's why the venture system is such a damn joke, because CTA and, the Chicago Transit Authority is so well known, and not just to Chicagoans, but to people that just love American architecture and the railway industry. But it's just saddening that those older guys are being pushed out, the younger people are being pushed in, but without the incentive of treating people right. And as citizens, as the passengers that make up those buses, we should have more rights than we do. And it's really sad that a single bus driver can make your life hell, because you're trying to get to work every day and you rely on this specific route and this specific destination. So you're gonna have to take the same bus every day. So you don't want to have a driver that's got a chip on his shoulder, because I can tell you that'll ruin your whole day. They ruin your day. By the time your day starts, you're already pissed off at work. And if anyone asks why, you look like, I don't know, like you're throwing a tantrum, when it's just you feel powerless and ignored. And we're all in the same bucket, and yet it starts to feel like a class division. And at first I thought maybe this was a race thing, but she right away proved that wrong when she yelled at this other guy who was black. So I was like, okay, so she just hates everybody. This girl just does not like anybody. And you can just tell, like I said, right away when all I asked was the time, she looked offended, like I was asking for her purse. And I was simply asking how long until you move. But the reaction I got was just really it was just uncalled for. And I'm not a Karen, so I'm not going to ask to see her manager. So all I can do is go back on my little streaming podcast show and bitch about it. And yeah, I do think that an incentive on pay would really be a good idea for CTA employees, to learn to appreciate not only how much they make, but learn to appreciate the job that they actually have, because there's tons of people that would be happy to have that job and would do it much better, or at least do it much happier. And I'm not saying that everyone has to have a smile plastered on their face, but that there shouldn't be a fine line between being civil and being a dick. There's, just being a dick to be a dick because you're having a bad day, and pushing that forward, you're paying that forward and giving it to your passengers. So now your passengers are starting their day off with a bad day. And, you shouldn't be hitting your morning coffee and already pissed off. You shouldn't be coming into work and already need a cigarette. That's the type of impact that a simple driver can make. And when you have to do this on a consistent level that's going to repeat, you really start dreading getting up in the morning, because you got to deal with that asshole on the bus. And for some reason, the ones that know that you're going to have to be there again, they are relentless. They love to piss you off, because they know that they can have you removed. The moment you try to stand up for yourself, you will be removed. And you know, soon it's going to get to the point where it's like an airplane, you know? Everyone's going to have to get off the bus because one guy won't stop screaming. And it's like, the reason why the dude's screaming is because you couldn't have just been civil and said good morning and just let the dude on the bus. Instead, you know, argue with people. Like, the amount of animosity and anger is just so unnecessary. And, you know, people like myself that just want to get from A to B would really like to get from A to B without being treated like crap. And again, dude, without us, you have no job. So I think that should be installed into their paying. So, you know, give them an incentive, pay them minimum wage for their first, you know, 3 months, see how they do. And if they are getting complaints already, then you know that you shouldn't be hiring them. So, yeah, sorry, I really had to get that CTA stuff off my back because today was one of those mornings where I was like, God damn it, it's just such a problem that is so avoidable, and all it takes is just a little bit of respect and humanity and humility and, you know, all those, pick a damn word. It's just being a nice person. It's just being chill. It's just being civil. All right, and that's my time. Thank you guys for watching. Love you guys. Always hit us up at uselessagentmusic@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, share, comment. Just help